Welcome to this explainer. Today we're diving straight into the fascinating digital pages of Ang's Notes on Gardening, specifically part 916. We're going to uncover a remarkably lazy yet totally brilliant method for cultivating a gorgeous flowering plant. If you've ever felt completely overwhelmed by gardening chores or, those really stubborn plants, you are absolutely going to love this.
Let's kick things off with a dilemma that pretty much every home gardener faces at some point. Seriously, are you tired of failing at lavender? Because it's beyond frustrating, right? You bring home these popular but incredibly fussy herbs, you treat them like royalty, and they just give up. Anne hit this exact same wall. And honestly, documenting that failure is exactly what makes this journal entry so incredibly relatable.
It perfectly sets up the battle Ang was fighting. On one side, you've got the absolute divas, lavender, officially known as lavandula, and salvia, which is your standard sage. Ang explicitly wrote about trying to grow and propagate both of these, and it was just a struggle. They were incredibly demanding. But then on the flip side, we have this surprisingly resilient local alternative that totally changed the game for Ang's garden.
And that brings us right to our main event. Enter Blue Porterweed.
Officially, science calls it stachytarpheta-cayennensis, but we know it as Blue Porterweed. Ang really highlights this as a phenomenal local substitute for those fussy lavender and salvia plants. And it's worth noting, Ang didn't just stumble on this overnight. It's been a long, heavily documented journey. Back in journal entry part 817, Ang experimented with propagating it via cuttings. Then fast forward to part 867, and we get a major breakthrough with successful seed germination. So we're really looking at a gardener who has analyzed this plant from every possible angle to see what actually works.
But, of course, there was a catch. The core problem Ang ran into after that initial seed germination success was simply the size of the seeds. They are practically microscopic. Because they're so tiny, trying to directly harvest them from the plant turned into a massive, tedious hassle. It totally zapped the joy and efficiency right out of the whole propagation process.
So how do we fix it? That leads us straight to what I like to call the lazy seed method.
Instead of pulling your hair out over tiny seeds, Ang developed a process that is delightfully lazy and boils down to 3 insanely simple steps. First, you just harvest the spent flower stalks, the ones that have already faded out. Second, you take those elongated seed-bearing stems and just chop them into little chunks. You're not painstakingly extracting seeds, you're just chopping the stem itself. And third, scatter those chunks directly over an empty flower pot. That's literally the whole shebang. No meticulous planting, just chop and drop.
And I've got to say, I absolutely love how Ang describes this final step. Once you scatter those chunks, you just let nature take its course. It's so ironic, isn't it? After all that meticulous tracking, the trials with cuttings back in part 817, the endless battles with fussy lavender, sometimes the absolute best gardening technique is to just step back and do way less. You give the plant the raw materials, and it does the heavy lifting for you.
Let's look at the actual results of this. The low maintenance payoff. According to Ang's notes, the scatter and wait method is a total home run. Once those stem chunks hit the soil, the plants thrive with practically zero intervention. In Ang's exact words, they essentially grow themselves. You get all the lush beauty of a flowering plant without constantly hovering, feeding, and pruning. It requires remarkably little attention, even when compared to how wild plants grow. Actually, the maintenance is so low that Ang only lists one single requirement in the entire journal entry. You just need to water them occasionally, and really, that's only during the heat wave season. If it's not crazy hot out, they are entirely self-sufficient. It's like the ultimate dream scenario for anyone wanting a gorgeous garden without a daily chore list. So, as we wrap up this explainer, we're left with a really compelling thought from Ang's journey. We've gone from the sheer frustration of struggling with lavender, through the hassle of microscopic seeds, to this brilliantly lazy stem chunk workaround. If Blue Porterweed essentially grows itself, demands almost zero maintenance, and practically does the work for you while your other herbs suffer, what are you waiting for? Why keep fighting with fussy plants when nature is practically handing you an effortless alternative? Think about how you could apply that let nature take its course mindset to your own projects. Thanks for joining me today, and keep exploring.